Hello, and welcome to the third and final episode of the Shiver Lost Ship Campaign Diaries. This will be the final episode in the series as our adventure gets wrapped up this session. Whether they succeeded or failed to prevent the outbreak of Consumed, you will have to wait and see. But let's just get straight into it. When we left off, they had just defeated some strange monsters in a containment lab, had a mysterious interaction with some Russian soldiers, and cured Charlie of the infection. The goal now was to look for Professor Broom. The captain had told the group that Professor Broom was the head scientist behind this entire experiment, and it was also assumed that he was the only survivor left. So the group was looking for him to both save him and see if they could do anything about this terrible situation that had occurred. They knew he was somewhere down on this floor, and they knew that they needed the captain's keycard, which they did have, but they also needed a second high-level security keycard. The group scanned through this next door and revealed the mess hall, but before they could have a proper look around, a mysterious monster emerged into the room. Out of the gloom, you hear a tearing sound. Far ahead of you, a thin line of light appears, suspended in midair. The streak of light begins to widen and tear as a large scythe-like appendage slices through, and a one-eyed creature begins to pull itself through into reality. An orange beam of light emanates from the pupil of its single lidless eye, like a searchlight. As you instinctually duck behind tables, it begins to scan the room. This encounter presented a new kind of challenge. They would need to search this entire, quite large space looking for a second keycard while avoiding this nasty, very dangerous looking monster. And that meant that this would need to be a stealth section. I gave them the option of either sticking together and making group checks or splitting off and each relying on their own independent stealth, which is controlled via wit. They chose to split up, citing that they don't all think they could be useful, which is an interesting way of approaching it. I think what they meant by this is they weren't confident that they could all succeed their skill checks, so they didn't want to drag down the people that did have a good wit. Guy took the lead, darting from table to table. His stealth checks were not always successful, but I didn't want this to be a fail and lose situation, so when they failed checks, it would either draw the monster to look in their direction or it would draw them to that location. But I gave them multiple opportunities to try and recover from failed checks. The party picked up pretty quickly that they could throw objects around the room to try and attract the monster's attention. So while Guy focused on stealthing around the room, Kate and Maxwell would throw objects to distract or lure the monster away from Guy. I really liked this because it was a tense situation that encouraged this creative thinking. With some pretty lucky rolls and a lot of help from Maxwell and Kate, Guy managed to make it to the brig, where he entered and closed the door behind him. In the brig, he saw that only one of the cells was occupied, except that was by a corpse. He tried the door, but he found it locked, which was a little bit curious. He asked if he could use the crowbar to open it, but tried to do so stealthily. Since he wanted to be quiet, but this kind of check would usually require a grit roll, I asked him to roll either his grit or his wit, except he needed both symbols in that roll. If he got a grit, the door would be opened. If he got a wit, he would do it quietly. But if he only got one symbol, he would only get that one outcome. For example, if he rolled grit but no wit, the door would be opened but it would be loud. If he rolled a wit but no grit, he would fail to get the door open but it'd stay quiet at least. This isn't an official ruling of Shiver, but it's something that I think is a great way of utilizing this skill dice system. You can call for a skill check, but add little additional results depending on what other dice show up. As it turns out, he got 2 generic successes on the talent die, so I kind of treat that as one of each symbol. So he opened the door, and he was quiet. He moved to the corpse to search it for a keycard. I built up the tension by having one of those classic moments where you approach a corpse in a zombie film and you're not quite sure whether it's alive or dead. In this case, it was alive, and as he got close, it lurched for him and a combat began. Guy had been a pretty successful fighter throughout this entire adventure so far, but that was because of his pistol. If he wanted to stay quiet, he was going to have to use unarmed attacks, which were much less effective. And that's what he did. A fight broke out between Guy and a Consumed, while Kate and Maxwell stayed back and began to wonder if this was taking too long. After a couple of rounds of combat that they weren't aware was going on, they did decide to risk some stealth checks and try and move closer to see if Guy was okay. They did make it into the brig, but their rolls were not great, and by the time they got in, the monster was very close to the other side of the door. By the time they got there, Guy was in a pretty bad state, having had some very bad rolls on his side. So Maxwell and Kate closed the door and helped out as best they could, and finally they killed the Consumed. By the end of the fight, Guy was on only 2 hit points, so one more attack would have killed him if it had hit. and this meant Kate pumped a lot of healing into him, both her once per Doom Quarter heal as a medic and also 2 of the 3 uses of medkit. This got him nearly back to full hit points though, which was lucky considering what happened next. As Maxwell grabbed the keycard, our survivors did discuss the fact that healing was getting a bit low.
Yeah, let's not do anything like that again. Yeah, I'm kind of running low on stuff to fix people up.
Save it for you guys. You've used enough on me.
Agreed.
I'm gonna glare at Maxwell. I'll
What?
use it on whoever needs
It's called
it.
gallows humor.
Now is not the time or the place. I have something called
It is
bedside
the
manner.
place. Tell her, guy.
I'm just gonna turn my back on him and walk away. I still haven't forgotten the
Back
bullshit you
there.
pulled back in there.
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean? Like angrily whisper. Snatching the vaccine. What was all that about?
Using the only viable vaccine we have on this guy?
Charlie scowls at you.
I'm not arguing about using it. I'm talking about how childish it was to snatch it from me. That was ridiculous. What did you even want it so badly for?
In case I get infected, obviously.
But he was infected and he needed it. Right there and
You're
then.
a doctor. I'm not. Your morals are not mine. Let's get on with this.
However, during this fight, the Doom Clock had reached 45 minutes, and that meant we had a pretty severe Doom event to resolve. Once the group was ready to proceed, Charlie cautiously reached for the door, clicked it open, and was snatched up immediately by a long, dangerous scythe. He was almost immediately bisected, and a portal opened up, taking the monster and Charlie through it. Seconds later, the portal reopened in the center of the room, and blood and gore splattered around the area as Charlie was very much killed. Originally, I had set for this 45 minutes to be Charlie turning and taking on his consumed form. However, they had cured him, so this wasn't really a possibility anymore, so I went with killing him and leaving it with just our 3 survivors having to figure this out on their own with their own skills and whatever health and equipment they had left. The monster reappeared in the room and obviously knew where our heroes were now, so a fight broke out. Guy opened fire on the monster and the group began to rush south, trying to reach the door so they could use these 2 keycards before they all got murdered. This was the first CR2 monster that our group had faced. They were used to hitting on CR1, so they now had to get used to missing a fair few shots. Kate could deal some pretty substantial damage with the flamethrower and her ability to put burn and bleed on the target, but this thing had a fair amount of hit points and they couldn't trust that Kate was going to finish it off before it finished them off. The Breaching Beast was actually capable of hitting multiple targets at the same time, so this definitely broke their morale as it deals pretty substantial damage, and they just began running south. After just one of these attacks, Maxwell was at a point where his hit points would not last, and he was bleeding, and the next attack would kill him from this Breach Beast. I wasn't confident that he was going to get out of this. Because of this, the group was pretty sure that at least one person was going to die in this fight, and they kind of gave up on the idea of killing this thing and began to flee. Maxwell was currently in his limping state, meaning he was slow, while Guy was still quick, so Guy grabbed the keycard off Maxwell and rushed south. Kate hit the monster with another blast of fire, but this did trigger a reaction, so both she and Maxwell both took 2 points of damage and became maimed, making them both slow speed. With every turn, it looked more and more like Maxwell would not be getting out of this fight. Kate and Maxwell both realized that they just had to get away from this monster, so they broke the brawl and risked taking that opportunity attack as they ran away. But because Kate had knocked it prone, it had a minor disadvantage on its attacks, and somehow it missed them both, and they were both able to break away and rush towards the door. Due to the repeated flamethrower from Kate and the fire rounds from Guy's assault rifle, plus the bleeding and the burning, the Breach Beast was actually getting pretty low, which is not something I expected to happen. I thought this was going to be a pretty nasty fight that they were forced to run away from. But this meant it was forced to take its turn to stand up and put out the burn on itself. It did manage to chase Kate down and get her back into a brawl, but it couldn't attack her this round. I was kind of banking on her breaking the brawl and letting it hit her. Kate tried to finish it off with another flamethrower blast, but she missed. This made her run, breaking the brawl again and getting another opportunity attack on her, and this time it hit. This reduced her to the trauma state, and now both she and Maxwell were 1 hit away from death. By now, Guy had reached the doorway they needed to get through, but he saw that they needed 1 keycard on each side of the door. This was designed for 2 people to access. Realizing he needed at least one of his friends to survive to get through this door, he turned around, opened fire on the Breaching Beast, and by some crazy luck, critically hit and killed the breaching beast. What had been intended as a runaway fight had actually been overcome mostly because of their knowledge of their weakness to fire damage. Immediately, Kate ran over to Maxwell and put out his bleed as well as healing him back up again with the last use of the medkit, which she did begrudgingly. And then they swiped the keycards. Together, you swipe the keycards, and green lights begin to flash above the door as it creaks open. In the immediate room ahead of you, you see a small, scattered office. And a man, wide-eyed, or before you're fully through, he hurries over and begins to grab you and pull you into the room. He seems tired, sad. You can see his face. He had accepted his fate. Your presence seems to bring him a little hope, but not much. He looks across the three of you. Good to see somebody alive out there.
Barely.
Alive is alive. I'm Professor Broom, and I'm afraid the hell you find yourself in is unfortunately of my design. You see, I was the scientific lead on this expedition, and now I believe I might be the last one left.
Yeah, it's safe to say.
Last one. Does that mean we get out of here now?
We can't leave, not until we've dealt with
Why?
the gate. We have to stop it.
The gate.
Yes,
Right. I remember this.
the gate.
Since you're the one who started it, you surely know how to stop it, right?
It's evolved beyond what I was ever expecting. It started with the USS Philadelphia. Their attempts at teleportation were high in casualties, but proved one important thing, that it was not an impossibility. Apparently, that disaster was enough to spur our government into action and provide hefty funding for more ambitious projects. Not only would we look into teleportation of physical and living matter, but we would look at the possibility of exploiting other worlds, other planets, other dimensions, whatever we could find. It seemed we traveled too far into the abyss. Now it's gazing back at us, expressing its own colonial interests. So we must stop it. The gate that we opened must be closed. And we must end this madness before it spreads.
Right. Hellgate closed.
Yes,
Where and how?
in the next chamber. The hull. It's evolved. It's no longer a metallic structure, it's a living thing. And it will try and stop you.
Right.
The best advice I can
No.
offer is that it's susceptible to fire, as they all seem to be. But I would abandon your hopes of getting off this boat. The best we can do is
Or
make sure nothing does.
we get you out of here. We call in reinforcements and we bomb the ever living shit out of this.
There's no time for that. How high up were you when you first encountered these creatures?
Brig. No bridge. We were on the bridge.
Then it's very much too late. All we can do is stop anything new coming through.
Did you know there were Russians on board?
No, it makes sense. One of the bases was in Russia. It's one of the weak dimensional points.
Yeah.
It's likely they found out what we were doing there and have come to learn more. We can't let them get
Makes
it.
sense.
Everything must be destroyed.
Right.
Nobody can walk away with the data that we have collected here. It's too dangerous, as we have proven.
Well, that I can agree with. Maxwell, you've got the thumb drive, right?
Yep.
I say we smash it here and now.
That wasn't part of our mission brief.
I mean, you've heard what he just said. We're probably not getting off this boat, right?
Yeah.
So there's no point.
But I
in
feel like
keeping it
if I
anyway.
carry this, the gods will get me through this somehow. Either way, if I die with it, it's the same deal.
But I mean, if they try and find your body, they might be able to get it off of you.
Honestly,
if
at
you
that
destroy
point,
it, it's gone.
doesn't seem like a problem.
But people could emulate it, start it again. If we're gonna have to stop this
Yeah,
here,
and if
then
they can do it from the scratch again, they can do it from scratch again. It's not like this came out of nothing.
exactly. So destroy it. Wouldn't matter either way, then, right?
I'd rather not.
Professor Broom approaches you, gets a little close for comfort, but I see you've had a run-in with them. How are we feeling? Do you feel them
With
writhing?
whom?
With the infected. I can see the symptoms.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Wait, are you saying he's infected?
Oh yes, quite clearly.
How do you know?
It's
We had
complex.
someone
She's
with
the
us that was
expert.
in.
Sunken
We had.
muscles. Look at him. He looks gaunt. Slight black veining around the neck. Suit ties it well, but
Did you know you were infected?
I wasn't certain, but I suspected.
And you just kept it to yourself this whole time?
Yes.
So what, you're planning to get off of this boat and just spread whatever is wrong with you with the rest of the world?
I was hoping to find a solution.
I mean, the expert's right here. Is there a solution?
well, I have a test vaccine. There's no guarantee that it will work.
Was it vaccine 17?
Oh, that one was quite successful. This one was earlier. There's a
But
chance.
what? Could we
I'm
make
willing
more?
to do anything at this point.
Can we make more of 17?
I would need to get back to the lab, and I don't quite think that's safe.
You're saying if if somehow we close this this portal, whatever it is you call it, we might be able to get out of here and maybe fix him.
Potentially.
Me and the doctor should go up there and do that now while you guys close the gate. I'm not gonna be able to help you in there.
I might not have been entirely clear. I don't think you can simply kill the gate. There are explosives in that room, in the hull. I want you to sink the ship. However, I will ultimately leave it up to you. If you feel capable of destroying a giant, multi-dimensional portal, I think we're all dead either way. Give it a go.
I'm fine with sinking the ship.
Yeah, same. I mean, we can go in there, sink the ship. You can head up and grab the data you need to make the vaccine, right? You can always make it back at a lab somewhere safe later on.
Yeah, and he can also start up this whole thing again later on.
I mean, I think he's learned his lesson.
Oh, yes, quite.
Sure.
Look, my priority is getting people off this ship, keep people alive that are alive, and possibly curing you.
I agree with at least one of those.
Well, I'm with Kate. I'm here to get you off alive at this point. So, yeah, I'm gonna blow this up regardless. You guys should start running.
Very well. With that, Kate and Guy moved to the lowest portion of the ship, while Maxwell and Professor Broom hurried back to the lab. Since the players had split up, I decided to start with Maxwell and Professor Broom. They hurried back to the lab and managed to get there without disturbing any consumed or triggering any encounters. Maxwell had remained very quiet during this walk, and once they reached the lab, Professor Broom immediately set to work trying to synthesize a new vaccine. Meanwhile, Maxwell wandered the lab and he managed to find a short-range communication device. However, he didn't use it straight away. After 5 minutes of diligent work, Professor Broom set a machine whirling away and he turned to face Maxwell.
Is it working? Is it synthesizing the cure?
We'll find out in about 5 minutes, if the ship lasts that long.
Mm-hmm.
Because he seems to know you're infected, he's definitely watching you to see how you're reacting to things.
You could just give me the experimental one. You know, in case I start weirding out, I can just take that as a last resort.
Might not do anything.
Have you had issues where it accelerated the problem?
No, we haven't really had a chance to test it. Things went bad so
Right.
quickly once the worms came through.
In that case, how about you tell me the encryption key?
The encryption key for what?
The encrypted information.
Why would I do that? We don't want that data getting out.
You say that, but you and I both know that the Pandora's box have already been opened. Do you really think starting fresh is gonna help anyone? These creatures know about us now. You've made first contact. They're not going to stop. What makes you think they will not be able to open portals from their own world? I've even seen it myself already.
Make a hearts check. He looks at you and you can tell there's like a scientific mutual respect in his eyes. Like there was a side of him that didn't want to let it go. But there's also a look of defeat. If you wanted that data, you should have stayed with your friends.
What do you mean?
The only way to unencrypt it is with a machine in a staging area, where the gate is located.
I see. Well, that's stupid. Why would you keep everything in the same place?
Well, we weren't quite expecting all this to happen.
No, you weren't. Doesn't seem like you have any contingencies either. You know, this is a fairly shoddy operation. What about the captain's locker? Is it safe? Do you know how to get into that?
I think only the captain knew that.
Hmm.
The machine beeps behind him and he turns and pulls out a small vial. Here's your vaccine.
Excellent. Let's do this.
He sort of just holds it in his hand, but doesn't make any motion to give it to you.
Okay.
The vaccine for the data.
Vaccine for the data. Sure. And I'll give him the thumb drive in exchange for the vaccine.
Okay. You make the trade. Good.
Excellent. And I will administer the dose.
Okay. You administer the dose, and you immediately feel the strength in your muscles return. You feel swelling go down around your neck and chest, and you feel like this cloudy jumpiness fade away.
Great.
Let's get out of here then.
Yep. We have a boat, but I don't have the keys. I'm going to call for some backup.
He gives you a curious look.
And I'll walk over to the radio set and change the frequency to the correct one. And in Russian, I will speak to my comrades that they should exfil me.
Okay.
And I'm also gonna pull a gun and point it at Broom, keep him at gunpoint. Because now he is the guy I need to get off the ship to get the data to my people.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Meanwhile, deep in the bowels of the ship, Kate and Guy prepared to enter the hull. They made a plan to rush straight for the explosives and try and blow the ship up as fast as possible, although they did give Maxwell and the Professor a fair few minutes to get a head start. Then, once they felt prepared, they entered the hull. What lies beyond the door is a truly horrifying sight. The cavernous metal chamber is revealed. The staging area, the walls, and the floor are plastered with organic tissue that pulsates and throbs with unnatural life. It covers every surface you see, spreading out from the far end of the room where you see its point of origin, the gate. Although not a gate in the usual sense, not metal, but organic. As with the floor and walls, it's made from fleshy blue material. Large tentacles pour out from the gate, which is a slathering open maw. And beyond it, darkness, with a pinprick of white light in the distance. Its bulbous eyes swivel towards you and it emits a sound that you struggle to comprehend. The room begins to move and writhe in anger as tendrils rear up and lunge for you. As combat began, 3 tentacles emerged between our survivors and their goal of the tables. I did not expect both of them to be able to make it out of this. I wasn't even confident that they could win the scenario. Kate was, in theory, able to take out a tentacle in one shot with a flamethrower. However, it did have limited ammo, and the gate can call as many as it needs, as often as it needs. The tentacles could deal 3 damage on a hit, and they had a 15-foot reach, so they could kind of deal consistent damage throughout the room. And neither of our heroes were particularly healthy. The gate itself also had various methods of attack. It could whip up to 50 feet, it had a beam of terrifying light, and it could also, once they got close enough, try to drag them into its dimensional maw. There's actually a whole section of the adventure about if somebody gets dragged into this dimensional space inside of the gate, but that never happened in our adventure, so Our survivors immediately put their plan into action, rushing forwards, trying to get to the table as quickly as possible. Kate was more injured, so she did stay back and tried to clear the tentacles, while Guy tried to weave a path through them, desperately trying to reach the table. The tentacles lashed out as they approached, bringing the already damaged Kate even closer to death. But by the end of round 1, they were both still alive. Guy, having cleared the path to the table, made it so close, but not quite there. His reward for this was being slammed by a powerful tentacle, which dropped him below half hit points. By the end of this second round, all the tentacles had been destroyed. However, at the top of the next round, the first thing the gate did was summon 3 new tentacles. And I was a little mean, placing one of them next to each of our heroes to immediately lock them into a brawl. To add further insult to injury, the gate managed to critically hit Kate with one of its gazers, leaving her on only 1 hit point, and frightened. I was pretty confident that Kate was going to die in this fight. It was beginning to look a lot like this would be a sacrificial last stand, not an escape. Guy quite cleverly stayed within the range of the brawl, but did make it to the table. He grabbed a cluster of 4 dynamite, strapped them together, lit the fuse, and threw them at the base of the gate. I gave them 2 rounds to escape, not because I thought they could, but because it felt appropriate to give them that last bit of hope. But I was fully aware they were both in brawls and very unlikely to be able to make that escape. Guy moved as far back towards the door as he could without breaking his brawl, and then it went back to Kate. She burnt away the tentacle next to her and rushed back to the door, but she couldn't quite make it because she was limping. Both the remaining tentacles attacked Guy. The first one hit, but he got a lucky dodge roll and managed to avoid the damage. The second one hit, and he had no way of avoiding the damage, so he was taken down to 4 hit points, which means he is in the trauma state, and he chose to no longer be able to make heart checks. At the top of the next round, the gate was the only creature that was still of medium speed, so it went first. It used its Into the Maw ability, trying to drag Guy back towards the mouth of the gate. This meant a contested grit check. They rolled, a draw. We re-rolled, and Guy won. Instead of being dragged into the gate, he ran towards the door. The tentacle in a brawl with him did make its attack, but it missed, letting him flee unharmed. Kate crawled through the doorway and stood ready to slam the door as soon as Guy made it through. As Guy ran, the tentacles closed in on him. The first one attacked and hit him, but his armor procced, taking the damage for him. The second tentacle missed. Then it was the next round. At the end of this round, the dynamite would go off. The gate went first and attacked him with a tentacle. It hit him, dealing 4 damage, meaning death for Guy. However, his armor procced again, taking the damage for him and saving his life. Guy went next, but he was still too far from the door by 5 feet. Normally, this would have meant that he was done. There was no way out. But he asked if he could give up both his interactions to just push for the door as fast as he could. I allowed him to make a wit check. Success meant he got through the door and he lived. Failure meant he died in the explosion. I will say you can make a wit check to just go all out trying to sprint for this door.
Alright, I'm gonna spend my luck. It's already burned my reroll.
Okay, you run as fast as you possibly can towards this doorway and slow motion dive through it as the explosion rips behind you and Kate slams the door just in time to protect you from the initial blast. You immediately feel the ship jolt. Maxwell, you above feel this as well. As the ship lurches and a huge opening appears at the bottom of the ship. You hear this demonic scream from beyond the door. And very quickly, you hear water rushing towards you and flooding underneath the door. Somehow, they both survived and achieved their goal of sinking the USS Morningstar. The last thing that all our survivors needed to do was get out of this rapidly sinking and tilting ship. We started with Maxwell and Professor Broom as they were much higher in the ship. It would seem they were successful. We should leave.
Yes, we should. And just so you know, Professor, I have nothing against you. I want you to get out of this alive.
I'm sure you do.
Really though, does it matter which master you serve? We need to protect this world. Either way.
Oh, don't lie. You're not doing this for protection. You're going to exploit it as we did.
Of course, but we're also going to defend this planet. Unlike you, Americans. All you do is consume and destroy.
He starts making his way for the door. How are we going to get out of here?
Let's leave.
You don't have the keys to your boat.
No, but I have called for reinforcements. They should be here momentarily.
This escape took the form of skill checks, trying to avoid various different obstacles. The first obstacle for Maxwell took the form of Professor Broom slipping as they climbed a staircase and twisting his knee quite badly. Maxwell made a heart check, and on a success, he managed to convince Professor Broom to keep moving despite the damage. Once they reached the bridge, unsecure objects were slamming down around the door as the ship tilted. Normally, this would have called for a grit check to try and just force yourself up this slanted flooring. However, Maxwell was in the trauma state and had decided that grit is the check that he cannot do. So, he needed to think of a different approach. He ended up using smarts to tie together some wires and make a makeshift grapple, and he used this to attach it to the bolted down tables and essentially abseil up towards the door. He helped Professor Broom along too, and soon they were both stood on the metal walkway outside of the bridge. Above the sinking vessel, a Russian helicopter was hovering, lowering a rope ladder for them both to climb. However, this rope was flapping pretty intensely in the wind. First, Maxwell helped throw Professor Broom to the rope. Then it was his turn. One last skill check to make the jump. Life or death on this one roll. Okay.
That's good.
The helicopter, the Russian helicopter, is hovering above the deck of the ship, and they are lowering a ladder, but it is going to be a jump to get there. You're going to have to leap for
Oh, this is how I die.
it. Make one final wit check to get out of the adventure alive.
I have one luck banked. Please, everything that's holy. Oh. Of course.
You
I
first
just love the triple zero.
Yeah.
You first help Professor Broom leap, and he catches onto the end of the ladder and it swings. And you're watching it come backwards and forwards as he begins to climb up it. And then you leap, but the icy ground on this ship causes your foot to slip. And you plummet off the edge of the ship. And you slam into the icy water below before a shipping container slides, forcing you deep underwater. And Maxwell is killed.
Yep.
But his mission
success
was succeeded.
Yeah, buddy.
Top thumb drive though?
He gave that to Professor Broom.
He did.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Alright. Maxwell had died at the last hurdle. However, he had accomplished his mission. He'd saved Professor Broom, and in doing so, collected the data for his Russian allies. Whether that turned out to be a good thing for Professor Broom, not so sure. And then we moved back to Kate and Guy. They had the entire ship to get through, which meant a lot of skill checks. They rushed back up the stairs and into the mess hall, where all the tables and chairs had piled up into a terrible mountain of uneven furniture. They rolled grit, trying to clamber across the tables as quickly as possible. Guy successfully hurried across the room, but Kate couldn't make it. She couldn't find the strength to climb over this furniture. Rather than push on alone, Guy hurried back and made a skill check for the both of them, getting the 2 successes that he needed to get them both through this room. Before they could escape, though, a small horde of surviving consumed rushed towards them. I called for a wit check to try and outrun these enemies. Again, Guy succeeded, but Kate failed. Rather than making Guy give up his own success, she sacrificed her flamethrower. She trapped the trigger down and threw it at the consumed, destroying most of the horde and definitely giving her the time she needed to hobble out of this room and close the door behind them. Reaching the containment room, the pair now needed to balance across a very uneven surface. I allowed them to choose between a grit or a wit check. Once again, Guy made it to the door, and Kate made no progress. Because of this, the water was now beginning to catch up and pour into these rooms that they were trying to get through. So Kate made another attempt at the cost of time, and this time, she managed to roll successfully and got across the room. The pair rushed up to the labs, and this one was a lot easier. It's basically a straight corridor, so they could just run on the side of the wall to get to the other end. So they bypassed the labs, and then they needed to get to the bridge. Unlike for Maxwell, by the time Kate and Guy got to the bridge, the doorway had been fully blocked by all this debris. Before they could even enter the room to climb out, they needed to clear this doorway. This time, they both succeeded, and by the time the water was rising up this staircase, they had cleared it enough to get into the room and try and climb out. This took the form of a grit check to just try and pull themselves up this steep flooring, and again, they both succeeded, very quickly managing to pull themselves out of the doorway, just as the ship impacted the water and began to lie at a 90-degree angle. They were nearly safe. They just needed to make it to Kate's boat, which was at the far end of the ship. They needed to balance along a very slippery, icy surface. But Kate was reduced down to 1 wit point. Guy made a play for both of them, putting Kate on his back and rushing forward. He would be making the check for the both of them with a minor disadvantage. A very lucky roll ended up critting this check, and he rushed along the entire length of the ship to where their boat would be waiting, but quite far below them. This left one final check for the both of them. Kate's boat was far below, but the USS Morningstar was sinking rapidly. They could either try to climb down the icy cliff or try to perfectly time their jump and leap to Kate's boat. After a quick, panicked discussion, Guy chose to climb, while Kate decided to wait out for the jump. Guy, you're going to make a grit check. If you get a 1, you make it down. If you get a 2, you make it down before her. And then we'll see what happens with Kate.
All right, I'm gonna burn my luck.
Oh, damn.
Okay. Guy
Good.
scrambles down this mountain as fast as he can and manages to get feet in the fishing boat. Kate, you're carefully waiting for the ship to come down. I will say make your smarts check with a minor advantage because Guy is reaching out to try and catch you.
So that's another skill dice, right?
Yes.
That means I'm not down 1 because of my trauma. Okay. Not trauma, sorry, afraid. Okay. I believe.
Okay. You leap at the perfect
Nice.
time.
Oh my god.
And Guy grabs you and pulls you onto the ship, and you both lie there, breathing heavily as the boat begins to sway and rock in the disturbance of the water as the ship next to you sinks. And you immediately notice that it is just you two. Professor Broom and Maxwell are missing, but you have survived.
Holy shit, thank you.
I saved someone. I actually saved someone.
I mean,
You are
you
still
did more
alive, right?
I think so. You saved more than me. I mean, I think we saved pretty much everyone, right? Like, it's gone.
As far as I know. It's the bottom of the ocean. I'd like to see these fuckers breathe underwater, you know?
Yeah, we can't celebrate just yet, though. Where are the others? Marie? I want to stand up and go look for Marie inside the boat.
The boat is still locked. The door is locked.
Yeah, I want to peer through the window. She's not here. And
I'm gonna scan around as well, just...
Make a wit check.
Oh, please let me spot a helicopter.
oh my
I
god.
definitely...
And maybe a couple corpses in the water.
Yeah, Guy, you walk up to the edge of the boat and scan the surrounding area. And as you look down, the water has been heavily disturbed by the ship, but as it settles, you see 2 bodies floating in the water. Marie and Maxwell. Marie's body looks broken. Maxwell's just looks frozen. And before you have the chance to say anything, you hear the loud, disruptive sound of a helicopter going over the boat at high speed back towards the mainland.
Was that the Russians? Did they kill them both?
I'm guessing so. I mean, Broom's not here, right?
I mean, that's who they wanted. Oh shit, I bet they have the research too. So we didn't stop anything.
Not yet.
You begin to hear the sound of thousands of tiny little splashing sounds.
No.
And as you look over the edge, like leeches, thousands of little black worms are scattering throughout the Arctic waters. And that is where we will end. And that was it. That was our adventure. This adventure took a lot of turns that I didn't expect when I was planning it. Maxwell killing Marie early into the adventure. The fact that both Kate and Guy managed to survive that final encounter. And both make it back through all those skill checks. I think this adventure definitely has some strengths and it definitely has some weaknesses. I enjoy the setting. I think the icy, isolated location works really well. But the structure of the boat does make it a very linear path. Just kind of one room after the other. I think there's a lot of potential for good roleplay, especially if your characters do have these little secret objectives. As for Shiver itself, I do really like the system. It has a few flaws, but I think overall it's a really fun and engaging system. Me and my group love the Doom Clock. It's probably our favorite part of the whole system. Having permission to do quite cheeky things with the story is really fun, and the fact that players know it's coming means that there's a build-up both out of game and in game, with the tension escalating. It also is a very clever way of preventing people from spamming skills. When somebody fails a roll, everybody doesn't jump to make it as well, because they could end up stacking a bunch of strange with all those failures. Instead, they think of new ideas if something fails. On the GM side, it's interesting because you sometimes feel like you have to hold back events. For example, there were multiple moments in the story where Charlie could have turned and it would have been a really cool moment. However, because I had Charlie turning as the 45 minutes Doom encounter, I held that back probably longer than I would have normally. It also means you do have to improvise some of these Doom Clock encounters. In my case, 45 minutes was supposed to be Charlie turning, but they cured him, so I couldn't do that anymore and had to come up with a new scenario, which still escalated the story. I really like the dice system and its flexibility. While it's not a written rule, I love the fact that when different symbols appear on the dice in a skill check, you can do things with them. If somebody rolls a grit, but they get 3 wit instead, you can use that 3 wit. How do you use your dexterity or your quick mind to achieve the same outcome? Or when someone wants to achieve multiple goals at the same time, can the skill check do that? When Guy wanted to open the door quietly with a crowbar, if he got the grit, he opens the door. If he gets a wit, he stays quiet if only one of them occurs. I think that's really great for adapting on the moment to various different outcomes based on the dice, based on the randomness. It's great for having the flexibility to make stuff up. The rules are simple enough that you don't need to worry about the mechanics of anything. Use one of the 6 skill checks and achieve what you want to achieve. It's definitely a yes and kind of game. And my group really liked the Nightmare Mode health. I asked them after the game, would you have preferred just a flat 16 hit points with no detrimental effects? And they said no. They said they really liked how the health meant something, how it meant that they had to adapt both their planning and their roleplay based on how hurt they were. In terms of the problems I ran into, the characters definitely feel like they're designed for combat, but the combat system doesn't feel fleshed out enough to be intended like that. One of my players said that combat was the weakest part of the game, but they always felt like they should be fighting. And I kind of agree with that. When they're leveling up, their skill trees are mostly combat abilities. And while the monsters are not built with a fleshed out combat tactical experience, for example, most monsters don't have interacts, which means they're missing actions every single round. The game constantly implies with their character design the opportunity to fight and the opportunity to win, whereas sometimes the monsters are there just to kill the players or to be ran away from. Another example of this is that Kate took the medic tree, but became very proficient at fighting from it. She could bleed targets, she could knock targets prone, she could analyze them to see their weaknesses. All that makes sense that a surgeon would know how to do that, but that isn't what medic implies in the name. And I also think the Doom Clock should affect more stuff. It's great as a storytelling device, but why not have it affect the mechanics? Why not have a monster where after 30 minutes on the Doom Clock it gets a new ability? You in theory could run a slasher, one nasty, horrible villain that the party has to run away from for an entire evening. But why not have that where after 15 minutes it gets another ability? After 30 minutes it gets new attacks or new interacts. After midnight it becomes unkillable except for a very specific situation. Have player abilities that either progress or degrade as the Doom Clock ticks up. I think it's a game with a lot of potential. And if I was to play it more often, I think I would begin to quite heavily homebrew it. Because the bones are there, the combat is great, the rolling system is really fun and really adaptable. It just needs to figure out what it is. If it's going to be a Resident Evil style action horror, show that in the design. If it's going to be an Amnesia style, run away, you're defenseless style game, don't base everything around combat. Make the skills about surviving, but not about fighting back. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Shiver. I think this adventure was really fun. I'm glad that we did it. Whether Shiver comes back for another series, maybe. I think if it does, it'll be a homebrewed adventure where maybe I fiddle with the rules a little bit. But next in the series of mini adventures will be Lancer. So please look forward to that. I hope you enjoyed watching the series as much as I did running it. If you did learn anything or want to take anything away from Shiver, then definitely do it. It has so much potential. But that is it for today. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want to, or leave a comment about your favorite moment from this series. I shall see you soon. Bye-bye.